Alrighty, good morning everyone. Welcome to another episode of the RDO podcast, episode number 50.
Hey,
50.
That's a milestone, surely.
Yeah, 2 weeks off the year. So, good morning, Alex. How are you?
No good.
No good. All right, let's start with you.
So I felt super anxious all week.
Okay.
I've not had and there's no reason to.
Right.
I've been doing deals.
Mm-hmm.
I've been making good
You've
money.
definitely been busier at work for sure.
I've got contracts on my houses, which are to my liking.
Yep.
Still been at the gym. I went twice at the start, but couldn't do Thursday because I had a client.
Okay.
Kicking goals, everything's good.
Mm.
But I feel really down.
Really?
So what I'm going to try and do is get off coffee for a little while, see if that might do it, because I've had a couple of those flying powers as well, and 2 coffees a day. I might just quit it for 2-3 days.
Try to give your adrenal glands a reset, maybe?
Yeah, because there's no reason for me to feel down.
I think a lot of people might feel in the same boat, just with everything that's been happening for such a prolonged period of time over the last 18 months.
But I've conscious of that. I switched it off. So I've watched no news this week.
Yeah.
I've looked after myself, like, health-wise, and, but, yeah.
Well, today's subject's probably going to make you feel even worse then, so apologies for that in advance. But one thing that I just wanted to say, look, for a start, it's not good that you're not feeling great, even though you have been killing it this week. Like, I call you almost every day. I know how busy you are at work at the moment because you haven't been busy for a couple of months. Obviously, you've ramped up to 3 days a week at the gym, which maybe there might be a fatigue element if you've just added that extra day in and you're going hard an extra day. Maybe you're a little bit more underdone than you're used to. That could be something. But yeah, look, obviously it's good to talk about it. So if anyone out there isn't feeling good, talk about it because it actually really, really helps. And whether it even helps you at the time, but also might help you feel better if the people who are around you know that you're going through a tough time as well, and they might be able to give you a bit more support or not say that stupid comment to you that they would normally have in there coming out of the back pocket. So, look, not to hear that you're not doing well. Good to know that you've got a plan, though.
See how that goes.
I do think that getting off stimulants for a bit can definitely help because obviously you go like this all the time. So if you just want to even out, it might be a good thing. So look, hopefully you're all good.
3 or 4 days or something, or usually after like you get headaches for a couple of days, and then 3rd or 4th day it's out of your system. So I'll try that.
Yeah, well, obviously let us know next week how you feel.
Yeah.
Now, the topic of today is I'm going to run through the beautiful coincidental dance between Queensland state of emergency declaration and extensions, lockdowns, and how they relate to the games of NRL that we've been able to enjoy this year.
Just another reason to hate it.
So, but before I get into that,
You keep talking, I'm just going to block something over here.
Yeah, cool. So, before we get into it, I did some research. Well, I turned the TV on to do some research this morning. I just wanted to catch the news headlines at 7 o'clock. But I turned the TV on a little bit too early, and being a Saturday, so it's beautifully windy Saturday morning, I caught the last 3 songs on Rage.
Right.
Now, I haven't watched Rage in a long time, because I'm not a massive fan of pop music. So, I mean, I remember... The last time I remember watching Rage consistently was when Mr. Lover Lover by Shaggy was number 1. So that'll give you a time frame of how old I am.
Yeah.
But caught the last 3 songs and was a little bit perplexed by it because obviously I think I'm starting to show my age now as well. So the last 3 songs, third last was a K-pop song, which was 5 effeminate Korean men in a Wild West setting, multiple outfit changes, but the dynamite outfit was when they all had their own version of double denim, but a banger, like a really fun song.
Yubiseo to all our Korean listeners, Yubiseo.
Cool. Number 2 was, Billie Eilish?
Yes.
So it was her song, which I felt like it was crap. Like, I'm just going to throw it out there. It sucked. It was it was like her. I couldn't understand a word that she was saying. It was like mumbling, sort of.
But we listen to heavy metal, so we can't really criticize her for that.
Yeah, I know, but there was no energy either. It kind of sounded like, because there's a bit of auto-tune in there, it kind of sounded like when a musician is trying to come up with a new melody, and they're like, oh yeah, that's good, like, you know, and they'll just try to formulate it in their heads before the actual song comes out. But then she's gone, I'm Billie Eilish, this'll sell, and she just threw it out there.
She's right.
And then the film clip looked like Billie Eilish walking down a street at night time having a mental breakdown. And we know how the kids out there love a good mental breakdown these days, so I guess that's how it sells, but it was terrible. And song number 1 was Ed Sheeran. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think it was a song that's called like Bad Habits or something like that, but it was Ed Sheeran in a pink suit pretending he was a vampire, like playing the part of a vampire with all of his vampire friends, on what looks like a night out in Surfers Paradise.
Is that a ginger joke? Because he's a red nut, he can't go out in the daylight anyway?
I don't know if that was the artistic direction that they were going in, but it was just so interesting because the whole, like, the concept of the video was like him and his vampire friends out on a night out. It looked like a night out in Surfers Paradise, like there's people everywhere, and you know, they all just start rolling around, and so it was weird. But it just made me think, like, the whole vampire angle, like Ed Sheeran's getting older now too, right? He'd be in his 30s, you'd think. So if Ed Sheeran was out on a night out in Surfers Paradise, it'd be like he's a vampire, like preying on children, like young girls. Yeah. Like, you know, like Twilight, right? So one thing that'll always get me about the Twilight movies is what's the main...
I don't know.
Main shiny vampire's name?
I didn't watch that. I didn't watch it.
Help me out. Is it Edward?
Yeah, sounds right. Team Edward, people were talking about.
That's right, yeah. And Jacob was the other one. Yeah. So, right at the beginning of the movie, I couldn't get through the first one. An ex forced me to try to watch these movies at one point. But the thing that always gets me is Edward, right at the beginning of the movie, you meet Edward, he's at his table in a classroom.
Oh, I didn't even think about it. Is he 2,000 years old or something?
He's like thousands of years old. He's a vampire. He's hanging out in the classroom waiting for young girls.
There's nothing in vampiranical law that says they're not slow learners.
Maybe. But yeah, that was weird. That was weird to me. So, but yeah, seeing...
The Count struggled.
That is a good point.
One.
But I feel... No, did the Count... Okay, no, maybe it all makes sense. Maybe the Count struggled because he just hung out in his castle on his own, right? So he probably didn't have any teachers there or anything like that.
By the newer vampire generation. Go to school. Stay in school.
Yeah, well, stay in school. Get a good education. Get a good 1,000-year-long education. Mm-hmm. And as Quagmire once said, the best thing about high school girls is I keep getting older and they stay the same age. So, yeah, Edward Sheeran. There's a link there.
Illuminati.
Yeah, Illuminati confirmed. All right, speaking of Illuminati confirmed, I just wanted to run through I'm going to say not brief timeline of Queensland's COVID restrictions, because I think it's been extremely interesting and purely coincidental to watch how there's been this beautiful dance of... the restrictions coming into place at certain times and then being lifted so certain events can go on and then coming back into place afterwards. And then I'm going to leave you with a couple of predictions, which...
Stop saying are.
Okay, which may sound conspiratorial to you, but time will tell and we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So just to start off with, so all the way back on the 29th of January 2021, so Queensland recorded their first case of COVID and a state of emergency was called or declared. And the expiration date of the state of emergency was the 29th of March. Now, state of emergency is what they need to put in place so they can enforce all the COVID restrictions. So your mask mandates, your social distancing, lockdowns, 14-day quarantines, etc.
Sure.
So fast forward to the 29th of March. So on the day that the state of emergency was due to expire, we went into a 3-day lockdown due to 7 locally acquired cases, and the state of emergency got extended again to the 29th of June. Fast forward.
Stop saying are.
Fast forward again to State of Origin Game 1.
Yeah.
So State of Origin Game 1 was Wednesday the 9th of June in Townsville. Now, I missed some stuff from May because I know there was some restrictions in May that were lifted at the start of June. But it's really tough trying to find all of these things. I've ended up having to go off the Queensland Health Twitter page and just go through their timeline, because the COVID restrictions page on the Queensland government website, they just update the same page every time. So they don't have an actual timeline there. So you have to piece it together yourself. So State of Origin Game 1, Wednesday the 9th of June in Townsville, and the crowd number was 27,533 people. And I'm going to throw the crowd numbers out there because, as you guys would know, when you have like actual lockdowns, and obviously this wasn't a lockdown time, but when you have them, it's like you're only allowed a maximum of 2 people to visit your house if it's for a good reason.
Yeah.
You can
10 people at funerals if half are dancing.
Yeah. You can only have, I think if you're a closed-in restaurant, you can only have people there if they've got 4 meters squared around them and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So from 1 a.m. On Friday, the 11th of June, so it looks like it's 2 days later, but it's really only 24 hours later, we had border restrictions to Greater Melbourne. So Greater Melbourne and Victoria were declared COVID-19 hotspots. Anyone who had been to Greater Melbourne in the last 14 days will not be allowed to enter Queensland, except for a limited range of people who can enter for essential purposes. Now, threw that bit in there because obviously there was some Melbourne-based players and staff that would have played in or been up there for Origin 2 days prior to that. On the 20th, so we're talking 9 days later, that was when that cabin crew member tested positive and there was a contact tracing alert for Brisbane. So that's on the 20th of June. Now, a week later, the 27th of June, there was a Queensland public health alert. So Brisbane and Sunshine Coast areas, because Queensland had recorded 2 new cases of COVID-19 in the community. So there's been a lot of cases recorded in hotel quarantine. Not worried about that.
Yeah.
It's
we're kind
the
of excluding
community
those,
stuff.
right? Because we
Exactly.
sort of know where they come from.
Yeah, and obviously they're international arrivals, and as long as it doesn't get out, that's okay. So the ones in the community are the problem. And that's usually what triggers lockdowns anyway. So 27th of June, two cases were recorded, and there was contact tracing and testing underway. Now, that afternoon, Queensland Health then found a further case, which was that miner who had come back from, I think it was the Northern Territory, had gone through the Brisbane airport, had been in the community in Brisbane for a day. So still on the same day, because that's the 27th of June, was State of Origin Game 2.
Right. Where was that held?
Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane.
Okay. Yep.
Crowd number, 52,273 people.
Yep.
Okay.
But they wore a mask on the way in.
Yeah, they wore. You had to wear a mask on the way in and on your exit.
Yeah, and if you're only allowed to cheer with one arm up in the air.
No, you can literally cheer as much as you like. But if you stood up to give a standing ovation, you had to put your mask on.
Okay.
And it's interesting because it's funny that you brought that point up, because I have heard what's her name again?
Jeanette Young.
Jeanette Young. So I've heard her state that the reason why it's okay to have your mask off when you're sitting down at the game is because they know what your seat numbers are, so they can contact trace the people around you.
Makes sense.
Well, does it make sense?
It does.
So they're happy for it to spread, provided they can contact trace the people.
Yeah. Keep going, and we'll come back to it.
Cool. So
we'll circle back.
So we'll circle back to it. So the next day, 28th of June, face masks were required for South East Queensland. And now, considering as well the expiration date of the state emergency at this point was the 29th of June.
Yes. Which was, and that date was set when?
Back in March.
Prior. Yeah, March.
In March.
Oh, March, yep.
Yeah, so end of March, when it was supposed to expire the first time, went into lockdown, we extended it to June.
Yep.
Lockdown commenced on Tuesday, the 29th of June, until Friday, the 2nd of July. And then it was extended in Greater Brisbane until 6 p.m. on Saturday, the 3rd of July.
Yep.
Which you'll remember being a...
Cost me 3 leads. Yep.
Wow, okay, there you go. So, impact on small business.
Yep.
The state of emergency at that point was extended until the 29th of September. Now, there is currently a bill in front of Parliament to amend that legislation and change the date from September to the end of April. Hasn't passed yet. It will pass. That's my prediction. It will pass.
September or end of April 2022.
2022.
Yeah, okay.
And this is what sort of comes into my 2 predictions as well. So you can actually jump on the Queensland Government legislation website. There is a bill currently in front of Parliament. It was tabled on the 16th of June. And it's amending the dates on the current legislation that's in there. So it will pass. There'll be no fanfare, but it'll pass.
About it. Yeah.
So, On the 3rd of July, we had a COVID update. So there was 8 new cases. 5 of them were locally acquired. On the 4th of July, there was a COVID update. We had 2 new cases, with one of them being locally acquired, the other one in hotel quarantine. So that's on the Sunday, the 4th of July.
Yep.
Day after lockdown was lifted. Sunday, 4th of July, Broncos versus Sharks.
Where?
Suncorp Stadium,
Yeah.
middle of Brisbane. Now, they had a crowd number of 13,840 people, but they were approved to have 100% capacity.
Which is 55.
It's 52,000 people,
Yeah, okay.
same as what the Origin crowd was. Now, you weren't going to get 52,000 people from Brisbane to go and watch the Broncos get pumped. Now, they won, funnily enough, but you were never going to sell that game out. So that's on the 4th. On the 5th, so the next day, we had a COVID update. We had 4 new locally acquired cases. On the 7th, we had another update. 1 new locally acquired case from a close contact. Also on the 7th, rugby union. Wallabies versus France, international game
Where?
in Brisbane, in Suncorp Stadium.
Yeah. Seating capacity?
Crowd number was
Crowd number.
17,821 people, but 100% capacity was approved again.
Okay.
Okay? Fast forward, you've got State of Origin Game 3. So we've still got mask mandates and stuff during this period of time. So State of Origin Game 3, 14th of July in Robina on the Gold Coast. Crowd was a capacity crowd, 26,307 people into Robina. The next day, the mask mandate got extended for 7 days as we had 3 new cases recorded, including that fully vaccinated airport worker. Now, this leaves us at where we're at today. So today's the 17th, so we're 2 days later. What am I... let's have some comments on this first, and then we can...
It like...
Yeah.
Okay, their comments. My comment is that people have been joking about when these lockdowns come, and the one thing that, because you aligned it up with the NRL games, there's also the school holiday factor as well. That it seemed that every school holiday there was a lockdown or a new mandate or something that came out. To talk about the mask on the way in, know where you are seated, I spoke to a friend of mine that is a police officer who sort of explained to me why it makes more sense now with the information that he knows about contact tracing, why it's important to have these, like, everyone stop, you know, so we know where everyone is, so we can trace it. So that part I kind of caught. Although I'm not 100%, I think we're doing ourselves some other damage with the masks on, because, you know, wear a mask for a full day and smell it.
Well, but not even that. Just human beings need oxygen to survive.
But you're not. I mean, it barely restricts your oxygen. But
I disagree with that. I disagree that it restricts your oxygen levels. If it doesn't restrict your oxygen, it probably don't restrict COVID.
But it does prevent droplets. Except that you were just filling it with your own bacteria all day. So in a hospital, they will swap them over every so often. It's like 15 or 20 minutes or 30 minutes or something like that, and they'll actually replace those masks, which we're not doing. We've got one in your back pocket, been to the toilet, used it to wipe, and then put it on your face, and then walking around.
Yeah.
Now, is it good as a signpost for humans to say, okay, let's be vigilant, let's remain socially distant, let's do those things? Maybe it's a signal for that, but there's probably some other damage there.
Yeah.
Now, when I've been following social media, specifically Twitter, everyone was talking about how it seemed surprising that you're allowed to have these games.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to do real menial things like me open my business.
Or have 3 people visit your house.
Yeah. So that was...
So my comments on that. So as far as masks go, I think that masks obviously will have some sort of effect in restricting the spread of the virus. That's why Asian countries have been using masks forever. And that's one of the reasons why they got on top of things very quickly, because it's just such a natural thing for them. You feel sick, you put a mask on to protect your other people. So I've got no problem with that. Where I have the issues is the thought process behind why in, say, a restaurant, for example, when you're seated with maybe members of your household, the mandates that you need to have 4 meters squared of extra space because it's indoors. Have you ever sat in a seat at Suncorp Stadium?
Yes, I have.
Yeah. You don't have... You can't social distance. You don't have 1.5 meters between you. You just don't. Like, but within a 1.5 meter squared radius, you'll have 9 people. Because it'll be you, 3 people in front, 3 people behind, 2 people beside you.
Yeah.
So you've got 9 people.
But open air?
Well, yeah, but you've also got screaming people who are yelling at the players on the field, whether they're standing or seated.
Yeah.
So...
Did you see that? Did I send you that meme someone made? Where the guy's eating, and then there's COVID's watching him, and he goes to stand up, and then COVID goes to get him, he goes, oh, almost got you.
No, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, I'll send it to you.
But so, look, I get the whole thing around the contact tracing. I understand that. But the double standards of that sort of contact tracing element, when if you wanted to have people over at your house in lockdown, could you not just record the names of everyone who came over? And then if a case of COVID arose from your household, you could call every single person up, or you could tell the contact tracers, here's the list of the people that visited my house on that day.
Yeah.
So that to me...
I was a bit crushed because I was a small business.
Yeah.
And to know that they could have a capacity crowd at Origin.
It's a clear double standard.
Yeah, and then, like, my customers were, like, they were just like, I'm not coming in because I don't want to risk a fine.
Yeah. And
which is fair enough.
But absolutely. And that's something else that you need to consider too. So with these, when we are in lockdown, the restrictions are, if you're not going out for one of the acceptable reasons, which is the getting essential food, doing essential work or study, providing care to someone who needs it, and what's the other one? Anyway, there's four reasons that you're allowed to leave the house. Exercise in local area, that's right. So those are the 4 reasons that you're allowed to leave the house. If you're leaving for a reason other than those, at the discretion of a police officer who picks you up, if they do, the fine's $1,334.50 for leaving the house.
How do they get to that figure?
I don't know.
How do they get to that figure? That's what boggles my mind, is like $1,334. $33.
Sorry, no, you're right. $1,334.50.
Like, what's that?
They may as well have gone $1,234.50.
It's a grand.
So make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1,500.
Yeah.
1,750. Like, pick round numbers.
Yeah. Now, also during the mask mandate times, it's on-the-spot fines of $200 if you get caught without wearing a mask. And now, to the credit of the Queensland Police Service, they've been extremely discretionary with handing these things out. They generally will give you a mask if you don't have one. They will ask you to comply, and they do state in their press conferences that they only will find someone when they then flat out refuse to wear it.
They've been very good about it.
They've been great.
Yeah.
And I feel really sorry for them, because people are going to hate the cops for them having to uphold rules which they may or may not agree with.
Sure.
At the same time.
Yeah.
So, my problem with all of this stuff, I'm a massive footy fan. I love the fact that I can watch the footy on the weekend. But I don't want to watch the footy at the expense of everyone else. I don't think that's fair. You've got a small business. I've got a young child who he doesn't speak much at the moment, so he gets a lot of his cues from our faces. You go out somewhere, you put a mask on, he's visibly sad because he can't understand what's going on.
Yeah.
It scares him. It probably scares other kids too, right? So what I have a problem with is the clear double standard between a juggernaut like the NRL being able to run their games and what every other small business owner or just citizen of this state is able to do. You're even seeing it now. So I'll get to my predictions, because this is sort of all gonna roll in.
Yeah, sure.
Why do I think that bill's just gonna pass with no fanfare to extend the date from end of September to end of April?
I know why. Because why wouldn't it?
Well, that's part of it.
Yeah.
But
there's no reason for the people that are voting on that bill in Parliament. There's no reason
to not extend it. Correct. There's also a key reason why you can't afford to not extend it without going into another lockdown. The NRL Grand Final is on the 3rd of October.
Right, okay.
And Queensland's now in line to pick that up.
Right.
So we never get the NRL Grand Final. I think did we get it last year? I can't even remember. But I think because there was COVID issues in Sydney last year, we may have picked it up then. Actually can't remember. But because we managed to pick up all 3 Origin games and let them run without a hitch, now we would be in line because they've just brought all the teams up to Queensland. They're all in a bubble now in Queensland, so they can keep playing out the season. And I feel that will continue for the foreseeable future because obviously Sydney and Melbourne are getting smashed again they're both in lockdown again as of today. So there's no way that you would be able to put our state into lockdown on the 29th of September like they have like clockwork every other 29th of the quarter to extend the state of emergency. You couldn't justify to put us in a lockdown on the 29th to extend it and then have a sold-out capacity stadium at Suncorp 3 days later for the NRL Grand Final. So that's one thing.
So what date are you calling the lockdown?
I think we will have a snap lockdown this week.
Okay.
And this is my reasoning behind that. We've brought all the NRL teams up so they can all play games at Queensland stadiums this weekend. Mm-hmm. We will not talk about COVID cases over the weekend while these games go on. But then, just like clockwork, I think we'll start talking about these. There's been these new community transmission cases, and we're going to do contact tracing, and we'll have a snap lockdown this week. It'll be 3 days, and the snap lockdown will go from probably Tuesday till Thursday.
Yeah.
And then they'll end the
Friday night's a great night for football.
Yep. Because it always happens towards the end of the lockdowns. We've got Anastasia Palaszczuk. We've got some really good news, guys. We've got some good news.
Can I also say too that NRL players aren't best known for maintaining the rules, like playing within the rules outside of the game?
Well, we've had 2 obviously extremely high-profile cases of that recently, which was the Dragons having their team barbecue party at their house, which conflicting accounts on how raucous it actually was, and there was no one from outside their bubble that went to it, but still was against the rules. But then you also had Jai Arrow bringing a girl back to his house during Queensland Origin camp for the last camp. So it was someone external from the bubble coming in, and so he got kicked out of the Queensland Origin team. So if you think that having all of the NRL teams living probably on the Gold Coast, if you think that they're going
it's a recipe for disaster. But I will say, I also feel bad for these players that are having to do this bubble and all this quarantining. Like, it sucks. It must be hard on them and their families. Same as like the Formula One. The reason why Melbourne has cancelled the Formula One is the government wanted the drivers or not all the teams to quarantine for 2 weeks prior.
Yeah.
And why?
And look, I see what you're saying about the NRL players, but at the end of the day, they're still being allowed to work when other people aren't. And they get paid very well for it. So I think for them, they should be happy to have the opportunity to work. They should have enough respect for everything else that's going on to understand how privileged that position is and to actually make sure they're doing the right things to ensure they're not causing a lockdown in the whole state.
Oh, can we place a punt on whether that happens? Because I would like to say that something comes out that someone was being naughty during that time.
I'm sure. I'm not taking that bet. I've obviously started a show which is about punting, and I've again had some mixed results. But this is a bet I'm not taking.
Quotation punting.
Yeah, punting.
Punting.
Yeah, it's called losing at the moment.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I'll redeem myself tomorrow. Yeah. But yeah, so that's part of my prediction. I think we're going to have a snap lockdown possibly this week. Because you've got Sydney in lockdown, you've got Melbourne in lockdown. We've got cases in Queensland at the moment. And we've also just started the alert out for the contact tracing because you had the fully vaccinated airport worker who just tested positive, who has been in the community as well.
How does that happen? Seems impossible.
Yeah, well. This isn't about vaccines, this episode. This is about restrictions.
So that was my...
Oh, actually, there's part of this that is going to be about vaccines. It's my next prediction.
Because you do your part.
Okay, so another reason why I feel like So what I found really interesting about the extension from the 29th till the end of April, it's obviously a massive extension. And considering the fact that the vaccine rollout, which is apparently supposed to solve all the problems, is ramping up already, we've got more supply coming in, and that every other time we've extended the state of emergencies it's been by 3-month chunks. I don't really understand how you can justify extending for that. It was an additional 7-month period, so more than double what we normally extend it by, when theoretically we're supposed to have more vaccine supply coming through, we're supposed to have more people vaccinated. So theoretically it should be less transmissible based on the medical advice that they keep telling everyone. So I don't understand how you can justify extending it for 7 months instead of 3. But I have a theory on this. And the theory is, because if you've been watching... So when all the politicians say this is not about politics, it is all about politics. Politicians gonna politics.
It's 50% about
Yeah,
politics.
politicians gonna politics the whole time. And there is this dance going on, particularly between Queensland and Victoria and the federal government at the moment, where Queensland and Victoria go into lockdown. They blame the lockdowns on the federal government's bungling of the vaccine rollout, supply. So I feel like, because this is straight out of the Democrats' playbook from last year during their federal election, because you had Democrat governors who locked their states down.
This is in America.
This is in America.
Yeah.
So you had Democratic governors locking their states down, tanking their own economies, because Donald Trump was running on how strong the economy was pre-COVID. So if you could show the economy was going bad under Trump, that took that string out of his bow. I feel like we're seeing something similar with particularly Palaszczuk and the Dan Andrews government, where they lock their citizens down, which upsets the citizens. They tell their citizens the reason why they're locked down is because there's not enough vaccines around, and the reason why there's not enough vaccines around is because ScoMo and the federal government have stuffed up the rollout. Now, the date of the end of April, that's around when the next federal election is supposed to be held.
You're right.
So my prediction is this: regardless of the vaccination number, regardless of anything else that's going on, I think, unfortunately, we'll continue to see regular lockdowns until the next federal election is called.
And that's what infuriates me the most, and especially when I talk to people that are kind of aloof to that aspect of it, that our livelihoods are being changed for reasons that aren't necessarily, now, mostly for our benefit. I'll give them that, mostly for our benefit.
Debatable.
But if your prediction, and I'm with you, I can totally see it, because look at the effects on the people. People are saying, I just want it to go back.
I just want it to go away.
Yeah, and I just want, and it is a really strong political tool. It's the strongest ever, where you've never in Australian history has the government had so much
power
over us people.
And if you think that I'm being just an anti-Labor campaigner, that's not the case at all, because the federal government's playing games at the moment too. And so I heard ScoMo's press conference from, I think it was this morning, where what you'll notice the federal government will do, anytime they get grilled on the vaccine rollout, the federal government, so usually ScoMo or Frydenberg, will quote numbers coming out of the UK. Right. Why is that relevant? Because the UK's got an extremely high vaccinated percentage. They're at about 80% has had at least one dose of the vaccination. Yeah. They're about 66% now have had 2, and yet they continue to get, I think they got 40,000 new cases yesterday.
Right.
So in other words, you've got this play, like you said, playing both sides, where the federal government's going, look, great news, we've got all these vaccines coming, they're on their way, everyone's going to be able to get a vaccine if they want it. Then when people go, well, you've bungled this vaccine rollout, they go, well, look at the UK, they're all vaccinated and they're still getting tens of thousands of cases every single day.
Yeah, I watched one of those and it was a real clapback.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're obviously playing the politics games too. So
Sure.
this is not a pro-Labor, pro-Liberal thing.
This is politics going to politics.
This is politicians doing politics.
Yeah.
And if you think that Anastasia Palaszczuk is just trying to look out for your best interests and keep you safe with all the decisions that she's making, and that she's not playing with politics, let me remind you of this. I think it was first quarter 2020, we were forced to go to the polls. There was a state election.
Yeah, that's right.
So right at the beginning of the global pandemic, when no one knew...
You can't do anything. You couldn't do anything.
Yep.
You know, this is when everyone was masked up. Everything was limits on how many people were inside businesses and buildings.
Yep. We were, and this was back when people didn't know what COVID really was.
Yeah.
We didn't know how transmissible, how deadly. All we knew is there was this new virus going around. The scientists and the health community's never seen it before. And yet, even so, Anastasia Palaszczuk still forced us to go and vote in person at the polls to vote her in so she keeps her job.
Yeah.
So,
I remember sitting in line going, this is mental.
I was freaked out. I had a 2-month-old baby.
Yeah.
And Nate had a stomach issue at the time too. So, with this rare as stomach condition. And Amanda and I, we remember it. We went out to the polls. Everyone's trying to social distance. We brought our own gloves. We brought our own pencils.
Yeah.
We didn't know how deadly this thing was going to be. And we're first-time parents with a newborn, freaking out, going, what if we catch something while we go out?
Yeah.
So if you think that Anastasia Palaszczuk's not playing politics, she's already done it. She already forced you out of your homes, regardless of how dangerous it was for you, because we didn't know at the time, to go and vote her back in.
Yeah.
And we did.
I just really, I'm concerned about that amount of power being constantly used.
Yeah, absolute power corrupts. Absolutely.
Yeah. Because those places that have opened up, like I said, it's cases are not the barometer of whether you're doing well or not.
No.
Unfortunately, that's the wrong metric. And
Yeah.
if you keep looking at that metric, it's never going to go away.
Yeah, and the problem is when you've got politicians who for every decision they make just go, it's just based on the medical advice. It's just based on the medical advice. Well, like you said, cases don't necessarily mean that it's better or worse. The media tells us every single day that every new strain comes out. There's a Lambda strain coming from Peru now. You guys probably haven't heard of it, but I'm sure you will. Every new strain that comes out, they say it's more contagious and more deadly. The way viruses work, because I've immersed myself in this subject, is generally as a virus gets more transmissible, it becomes less deadly. Because the whole point of it transmitting from person to person is to survive. There is no benefit to a virus to kill its host, because then it's got nowhere to live and it will die out. So typically with every other virus, what happens is they do mutate and they do become more transmissible. But as the transmissible percentage goes up, generally the deadly percentage goes down. And the media still keeps saying, Delta variant, more transmissible, more deadly. Okay, we've had 2 people die from it in Sydney. I'll acknowledge that. So now we're up to 3 deaths from COVID so far this year, which is neck and neck with the confirmed deaths from the vaccine rollout. But one of the deaths was a 93-year-old woman in Sydney. The other one was a 70-year-old guy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the headline from the 93-year-old woman should have been, woman makes it to 93, well done.
Had a great job.
Yeah,
Had a great life,
you know. And there's also that selective usage of wordings in that it's things like, so on the TGA weekly COVID safety report for vaccines, it has 355 people have reported dying shortly after being vaccinated. Only 3 of them they can 100% say was to do with the vaccination because it was TTS, so the thrombosis with thrombocytopenia syndrome from the AstraZeneca jabs. So 352 of them are just classed as coincidences at the moment. However, on the flip side of it, if you have a 93-year-old person who dies, it dies with COVID. Not necessarily dies of COVID, but they get classed as a COVID death number.
Yeah.
So if you die and you've got COVID, you're being counted as a COVID death number, regardless of whether or not it was something else that actually killed you too. Yeah. So again, that's the problem with data. And we've said this a million times. Data can tell whatever story that you want it to tell.
Yeah.
But, so getting back to predictions. So like I said before, my predictions are, we're going to be talking snap lockdown this week. So I'm sorry if it comes true. I really hope that I'm wrong on this one as well. Like I was wrong about Tommy Turbo anytime try scorer.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Tommy. You screwed me, mate. You absolutely screwed me. So I reckon we'll be having a snap lockdown this week. I think that and I'll be keeping an eye on that bill to see when it passes. It normally takes ages to pass bills anyway, and they've got 3 months to do it.
Yep.
So it'll pass at some point, and they'll extend it out to April 2022. And I do predict you're going to see that dance, and the dance is going to be we go into lockdown, and like you said, around school holidays or a time that really affects people, so you get maximum impact. So we go into lockdown. The state governments bitch about the bungled vaccine rollout, and it's all ScoMo's fault, and you're locked down because ScoMo bungled the vaccine rollout, and that'll continue on until we go to a federal election next year.
Interesting. So after the federal election, then what is so whoever comes in, whatever happens, what do you think happens from there?
Well, what happened in America when Biden got into office?
Well, he enforced things hard, but now they're relatively back to normal.
So they're still getting heaps of cases over there.
Yeah.
So, and again, this is just another coincidence. Purely coincidental. The day that Biden was inaugurated, so 20th of January, the World Health Organization put out new guidance for PCR tests and lowered the cycle count. Just a coincidence. And seemingly overnight, the amount of cases went down in America. Because you're obviously not going to find as many if you don't cycle it up as much. So, getting back to Australian politics, it's really going to depend on, I think, who gets in. But I honestly don't know what happens after that. I just feel like that this is my short-term predictions. The states are playing a politics game.
Yep.
And it's to the end of getting ScoMo voted out and Albanese voted in.
We need some super independent to come through. I haven't done any research into it, but I want to find like an independent that's going to get my vote.
We need to get like the Joe Rogan of Australia. So you guys need to build up our channel so we can become the Joe Rogan of Australia.
I don't think anybody wants that.
I look like the sort of guy who could run a country.
But you bet on things that lose.
You don't think...
We're going to build high-speed rail from here to
Mate, we're
Karratha.
We're currently betting on a vaccine program that doesn't stop you from getting the disease.
Yeah.
And then we're locked down based on cases,
I have a feeling
not hospitalisations and deaths.
My optimistic approach, I think just like what has happened in the US and the UK, because we do kind of model ourselves after them, we will get to the point where they'll realise we've just got to pull the plug and just get back to it, and it will be what it will be. Only because we are influenced by them. Do I think they're playing political games? Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of weight to what you've said, and that could mean that we get extended out further purely because of the way that our elections are set up.
Could I just make another point on that point? So we haven't talked about COVID or vaccines for 2 weeks. What's the federal government's model number for vaccinated threshold to get out of phase 1?
They haven't said it.
Oh, it's been 2 weeks. We haven't figured it out yet? Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
But it'll be a scientific number, not a political number.
Yeah. So yeah, there are definitely some games being played, and I don't like it. I am one of the people that's affected by this, and there's a lot of people out there that I've spoken to that aren't affected, and then they're just like, no, that's fine, it's fine. But like, my gym next door had to lock. Some of those trainers only get paid per.
Of course, per client.
But client can't come in, and there's no assistance. There's no financial assistance.
Well, they're starting to bring out some more now.
I'm not eligible.
No, you won't be eligible, of course. But that you just raised an interesting point, because this is something that gets my goat, grinds my gears a little bit, is I've had similar conversations with certain people who are not affected by any of this, or are even, on the flip side, affected in a positive way by this. And a lot of people that I speak to are only guided by how it affects themselves.
Yeah. And that's human nature to do that.
Yeah, it is, but it's selfish.
It is selfish.
And look, at the end of the day, for me, I'm a stay-at-home parent.
Yeah.
So I can stay at home. The only thing that affects me is if I want to take Nate to a theme park or something like that with a lot of people around, and I can't do that, or if Amanda and I want to go out for dinner, or whatever the case may be. But I am relatively unaffected by these lockdowns because I spend a lot of time at home or exercising in my local area anyway. But it breaks my heart when I see, like, I'm the son of parents who we had a small business. We went for 30 years. We had a small business. And one of the things that was always interesting when we were growing up was the strip of shops that our dad, or mum and dad's pizza shop was on Main Street on Tambury Mountain. You used to see small businesses start in those other shops every 3 to 6 months.
Come and go.
Then they would just come and go because no one could make it work, because having a small business is hard.
Yeah.
And in Australia, we talk about all the time the rhetoric of small business is the lifeblood of this country. Well, these conditions, small businesses can't survive these conditions.
And they favour the big guys.
Absolutely.
They favour the big box.
Yeah, so there was a Korean cafe on this street.
Yeah.
Just up the road, which has been there for 5 years. They've shut down.
Yeah.
They're done. So do I think that they would have had to shut down without all these restrictions? No. We ate there just before they shut down. They're a good little cafe. And the problem is that then, so the governments have been coming out. So this is another thing that, but this is states and federal that have been saying this. They've been coming out and they've been pulling themselves over. Look how good the economy is going. Look at the employment rate. So I heard Palaszczuk was saying that they were expecting it to be 7% unemployment in Queensland, and it's down to 5.1%, and that's such a great result, and look how good we're going. So who are these people employed by? Because if a stack of small businesses are closing down, that means these people are employed by the big box stores of Coles, Woolies, Kmart, Targets, the ones who have been allowed to stay open the whole time.
Yep.
But also, how many of these people are employed in things like the new vaccination hubs and stuff like that? So there's been talk through the media of one of the issues that we're going to get as vaccine supply becomes more available is we don't have enough people to be able to administer all these vaccines. And there's all these different vaccination hubs which have just sprung up everywhere. Now, they've had to employ people, obviously, to be able to carry out those vaccinations. Those aren't regular ongoing jobs once this is all done.
Yeah.
Or maybe they will be, because maybe you're going to need your booster shot every year because the new alpha gamma strain is going to come out, double uranium strain, and you're going to have to get your new booster shot every single year. But those aren't ongoing jobs.
The other thing about the employment thing is, though, those big box jobs, they aren't really high paying, and they're not even full hours. A lot of them are on part-time contracts.
Yeah, so there's underemployment and stuff like that
absolutely.
too.
Lots of underemployment, where they can just wind your hours up, wind them down, how you see fit. Now, part-time work has lasted forever, but you know, you should be able to start a business and go, okay, I need someone that's going to work, give them the 40 hours a week, 38 hours a week, week in, week out, you know, with no problems, but it's just not happening. Yeah. It's just not happening under these conditions. It's hard to do it.
And so, look, what's the point of even talking about this? Because it's a pretty depressing subject. I think what my point is coming out of this is the only things that we can control are ourselves, how we respond to situations, and we do need to be really clear and sort of vote with our feet on certain subjects, because it's one of the only bits of power that we do have as a regular citizen. And I want you to be mindful of the fact that your regular news cycle is designed to remove things from your brain that they don't want you to remember, such as Palaszczuk making us go to the polls right at the start of the pandemic, such as Fauci's emails being leaked about the lab leak theory, such as Bill Gates protecting patents on the vaccine. So anyone out there that's pro-vaccine, we could all have it by now if there wasn't the patent protection. So the news cycle is designed to get you to forget about those things and think about whatever it is that they want you to think about. And I'll give you
so they can sell toilet paper.
So they can sell toilet paper. And, well, that's the best point, because a lot of people think that when we're saying this, it's to sell you the rhetoric of what's in the news stories. That's not it. Where do the sales come in? When you turn the news on, is there advertising the ad breaks? Yes. So what they're talking about is designed to hold your attention so that when their advertisers come to them and want to sell toilet paper, they put a toilet paper ad on during the news.
Look how many views I get. And how do you get views? By being shocking.
Here's an interesting story too, which I think I told you about during the week. There's in America, and again, this is America, but this is still something to consider, because obviously I watch a lot of what happens in America because it tends to flow down to here anyway. So in America, there is two different sort of news anchors. One's a Democrat, one's a Republican. And the Democrat one's Rachel Maddow, the Republican one's Tucker Carlson. And Rachel Maddow recently was sued for defamation by someone because she did a story roasting someone was factually untrue. Mm-hmm. In a court of law, Rachel Maddow's lawyer argued that no one who watches that show thinks it's the real news or real journalism. They think it's an entertainment show. She's an entertainer and she's putting on a performance.
Right.
They argued that in court.
What does she host? I don't know who she
I don't know what her show... It's one of those news shows with like a polarizing person.
Right.
So,
the
but politically...
Like Alan Jones.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly the same thing. So, and Tucker Carlson's the exact same person, but on the other side of the aisle, on the Republican side. So, they have actually classified those people now as performers, not as journalists. Because it is performative. But that's got to make you think about our own media landscape that we've got here in Australia. And one of the things that I think about a lot is I often go to the ABC to try to get... My old thought was a more balanced, less commercialised news cycle. Well, ABC News has got ads on it now as well, so they are selling advertising. There is obviously funding from the government too, which... Earlier in the year, the federal government cut some of the funding to ABC, and you can definitely tell that the ABC's got a little bit more of an anti-federal government slant to it now. But also, at the end of the day, they are the public broadcaster, which is paid for by our taxpayer dollars, which is going to push the government's agenda. And everything on the ABC has been about getting vaccinated for months now, since the rollout. It is marketing. It's extremely effective. It is extremely effective.
Because that's what most of the populace, that's what they see.
Yeah. So whenever you bring... And again, once... So this is the cycle, like we were saying. So let's talk about lab leak theory. The mainstream media news cycle pushed the bat soup narrative in our faces for months. Had Fauci on TV talking about bat soup for months. Then his emails get released at the start of this year, which should be one of the biggest scandals... In our recent history, at least.
Most people don't know what happened. Yep.
Most people don't even know what happened. But Freedom of Information Act, 3,200 pages of Dr. Anthony Fauci's emails, where he knew back in January that there was this new virus on the loose, that it was part of it looks like it's genetically engineered, and it was asking the question, basically, are we exposed here?
Yeah.
You guys don't, maybe not you guys, because anyone who watches this knows from us talking about it, but turn on the mainstream media. Are we talking about this?
Yeah.
It's one of the biggest scandals in our recent history, but we don't talk about it. So what are we talking about now? We will be talking about lockdown in Sydney, lockdown in Melbourne, COVID cases. That's what we're talking about. The Haitian president just got assassinated.
Yeah.
There's been brief stories about it on our news over here. But apart from brief stories about it, we're not talking about it.
Yeah.
Is
That's heaps of stuff.
Is that not a big deal?
That's big news.
Yeah, that's the news. So when you turn on the news, don't expect to see the news. Expect to see something that clickbaity, how can I hold your attention, just like social media.
Yeah. And now it could be based on it's based on the news.
Yeah.
But whether it's right or wrong is...
Yeah, and it's also...
And they never get held to account.
And that's the other thing too. They never get held to account. And then you see an example of Rachel Maddow trying to be held to account by someone suing her for defamation, and oh no, but she's a performer, so it's fine.
All right, we need to wrap this up because I've got to go.
Cool. Anyway, thanks very much for joining us, guys. Let us know in the comments if you think any of my predictions will actually come true, or if I'm full of shit, like it was during the week.
Check out Jason's new show too.
Yeah, not just the tip. Coming out probably Wednesday, Thursday, every single week, just depending on what sporting events are on. I had a lot of fun with it. It was my first run through on the week, and first run through using all the new technology and stuff like that as well. So I will get better. Stick with me. My tips will get better too. Yeah. Thanks for joining us. See you next RDO, guys.